we identified that actually we had an awful lot of work to do with D365 CE. We understood that we got a great technology stack, and we understood we got an initial implementation. But on the CE side, it was the original implementation had, I think I can best describe it as vandalized a lot of the core entities within the platform. So it wasn't just a question of attempting to do a brand new installation. We needed someone who could effectively help us to do a pretty significant repair job. And that was really the start of our journey to track down Gareth and TrueNorth, because we needed someone who wasn't just going to turn up and do us a greenfield implementation. We needed someone who was going to understand, this is bad, this is really bad.
Right.
But we can't do a re-implementation. We've got to repair it. And there aren't many outfits out there with the skill sets and the knowledge to be able to deliver that.
Right.
Hence, TrueNorth joining the fray.
Wonderful. So how did you go about identifying that TrueNorth did have the skill set that you needed?
Well, that was so historically, I've worked with a lot of the big players in the technology world. Now, I have a bit of a pathological hatred. I'm not going to name names. We probably all know who they are, the big four or five. Yeah. And I've led some fairly chunky programs, and working with those partners, to be honest, was pretty miserable. So from about 2016 forwards, I'd worked on the particular program I was working on at the time. We'd looked to introduce a new model, really, which was stop working with larger suppliers. Go and find a supplier where actually they are big enough to support what you are trying to do, but they are small enough for them to be important to you.
Yeah. And
build the thing out as a proper partnership, right? Don't just take a supplier on and beat them over the head. Take a supplier on and look to work with them. So we knew that was potentially the model that we wanted to go down. In coordination with Nick Hellman, we also identified that actually it'd be really nice if we could do it locally. It's like if you cut Redcentric through the middle and it was a piece of rock, it would literally say made in Yorkshire through it.
Right.
So we wanted to try and find a supplier that kind of had that similar ethos, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely.
And to cut a long story short, I had a trawl round this neck of the world. Yes, there's quite a few D365 solution providers out there, but there aren't many that have the experience of what we needed. And in short, I tracked down a number that were locally based. I think I also spoke to Microsoft as well at the time. And I just had some informal conversations with 3 or 4. I think we did some initial discussions in slightly more detail with a couple, but it was obvious from the discussions that we were having after I'd met Gareth that there was one outfit that was head and shoulders above the rest, and I'd argue the rest is history.
Thank you, Martin.
That's wonderful. So what sort of technologies, capabilities, what specifically were you looking for when you saw that TrueNorth was a good fit?
So from a technology perspective, that's fairly straightforward because we're operating a largely D365 environment. We are a Microsoft shop, and we are Power Platform. So that's all fairly straightforward. But we also needed an outfit that had a real clue about integrating out to a lot of our other enterprise platforms, which are not part of that ecosystem. In particular, we have an ITSM platform called SMAX, which is made by a company called Micro Focus. Which it has a great integration architecture, but we needed to have a partner that wasn't just going to help us recover what was broken. We had an entire roadmap, which meant bringing a number of these other back office systems into play. So we needed to be able to do integration. So we needed to understand that whoever we were going to work with was also capable of taking us past the point of repair, getting us to the point where we could start to do integrations. And really what we're looking to do is to drive forwards ROI, at the end of the model.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, the program costs money, and we've got to demonstrate ROI on that.
Yeah.
And so that's how we ended up in that position. And those are the technologies that we work with. So it's really guided by, I guess it's really guided by the fact that we're a Microsoft shop and we have a bunch of clever stuff that we also need to integrate with.
Of course, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes. And so you started working together. How would you actually define, asking both of you, I guess, a successful partnership? What does it look like?
I think it's based largely on trust and communication. I think that's what's been clear from the start there, from those initial conversations with Martin and the team. Just being completely honest and upfront. The conversations at that point were with myself and my fellow directors, and they're still closely involved on the project now. So I think that being able to promise that continuity throughout and not being hand-offed from one team to another as you might with a larger organisation, that helps build up that trust, builds a relationship, and I'd say that's probably got a lot to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if you ask me what makes a good quality supplier, for me personally, it's really simple. Do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it, right?
Yeah.
There's probably people out there that would put their hand up. Oh no, it's all about the cost. It's all about the price. Yes, the commercial arrangement is really important with your supplier, but in my personal opinion, it shouldn't be the overall driving factor, because I don't think you're going. In my lived experience of that is it doesn't necessarily drive quality.
Yeah.
In terms of your suppliers. And so that's kind of the ethos that we've ran with TrueNorth. TrueNorth are fully embedded in everything that we do. It's been a true partnership right from the beginning, and we were clear that actually if we were going to be a success, I didn't want this kind of this traditional, almost adversarial kind of relationship. We want something where you've got two organisations truly understand the goals, the business problems we're trying to solve and where we're trying to get to. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And we've been able to do that. TrueNorth are really highly integrated in everything that we do. I think the other thing I call out at this point, which we were clear to them when we took them on board, is yes, we have a bit of a clue about what we want to do and where we want to get to. And I think we're pretty good at strategy and vision. And we're pretty good at technology stacks, but actually we do need to be challenged. And right down to the guys that we work with, the devs at TrueNorth, I think we've generally built a culture of, if Martin or the team asks for something and that is utter madness, go and point it out that it's utter madness.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't be going in that direction of travel. There's another direction of travel. So it's not just about that kind of, turn up and build some stuff for us. It needs to be properly collaborative, properly challenging, and properly delivering on the ROI we've been asked to deliver.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and that ties in so well with TrueNorth's ethos, really, because we are very much we pride ourselves on being a delivery-led organisation, and that slots right in with what Redcentric needed, and I hope we've been able to demonstrate.
Yeah, seems that way, and you do seem a really good fit in terms of the two companies. But Martin, I'm just curious to know what specifically, in terms of that fit, is driven, do you think, by TrueNorth being a smaller company as opposed to a big conglomerate?
Well, I'll say, alluding to the observations I made earlier, I have some fairly hardcore miserable lived experience of working with some of the big 4 or 5 players, and on a personal level, I just got to the point in my career where I just didn't want to go down that route, and the whole ethos, coming back to some observations I made earlier around looking for an outfit which is small enough for you to be important as a customer, but large enough to deliver, is something that I'd sort of developed with 2 or 3 suppliers in a previous program,
right? And
I knew that it worked. And I think another important part of that is the development model, because we run agile, and I have to say it was a bit of an epiphany for me, probably 2013, 14. Agile had been something that had been on the periphery, but for various reasons we brought it into full play in that particular program, and it was absolutely transformational. And I realised that actually that goes hand in hand with having a number of smaller suppliers that can work together.
Is that because they're more responsive? Or
absolutely, they can move at pace. You're no longer in this situation whereby you're working with they'll probably shout at me if you make any observations, but if you're working with what I regard some of the largest, almost legacy suppliers in my world, right? They tend to work in a fairly rigid style. At that point in time, waterfall was still fairly embedded. And if you look at some of the products that were around, sort of in the early sort of 2010s, some of them were quite still monolithic, big kind of single release a year type products, right? Now, if you're a business and you're trying to move forward quickly and you've got business problems to solve that you need solving now, right? You don't want to have a conversation now about a roadmap, which you may or may not be important enough to influence, to have some development done that may or may not arrive in 18 months' time.
Sure.
We want to be in a position where our users, and this is a culture that TrueNorth have been part of, and Brian's worked very closely with me on is, we have a culture at Redcentric where literally pretty much anyone can call out, I have a business problem to solve, and we have proper processes in place to take a look at that business problem, to throw the resources at it to understand, is it a business problem we need to solve?
Yeah.
How big is the business problem? What resources do we need? But the point is, I want to get to the point where someone will have a conversation with us, and if it's a small business problem, we can have that conversation, we can do some discovery, do some design, do some build work with TrueNorth, and theoretically, 2 sprints later, 4 weeks later, a business problem we had here is solved in the product here.
Yeah.
And for small items, we can do that. Now, the bigger ones do take much, much longer, right? But that's where we were trying to get to, if that makes sense.
And that wouldn't be achievable with the big conglomerate of the sort that people traditionally.
I'm sure that they would sit next to me and go, yes, absolutely, we can do that for you. That's not my personal lived experience.
Yeah, sure.
And I think we're at that now, aren't we? Genuinely at the point where, like you say, for those smaller requirements, from someone flagging it to it being in production is a 4-week window. Now we're releasing every 2 weeks of production. It's often spoken of as that being the aim, but that's a reality now, isn't it? We're actually doing it.
Yeah, it is absolutely.
Yeah, which is brilliant. So obviously you've been working on big projects together. How do you build the trust to be able to operate at kind of this quite big project level?
So I think that's, again, I think it goes down to communication and what Martin said earlier, that deliver on your promises, and if something's not going right, then be candid with it. I think Agile absolutely lends itself to that open communication. So the team, both on Martin's side and our side, we're working together. We've got daily meetings. So everything's logged on as your DevOps. So there's full transparency on the state of play. So there's no surprises for anyone, and ultimately it fits in. We have what we call a fixed price sprint model.
Oh, yeah.
So even though we're doing Agile, what we commit to in that sprint, even if it takes longer than we think, it's not going to bleed into the next sprint's effort.
Yeah.
So all this builds the trust, builds that trust. You say?
Yeah, I'd echo all of those observations. And I think if I was going to make a further observation on that one in terms of have we got it right? I happened to be at a DT conference in Amsterdam back end of last year with Brian, and we saw a lot of the large players. We saw some really interesting stuff, and a lot of the large players doing presentations. But actually, we didn't see anything that either we weren't already doing. We weren't thinking about doing, or in many cases we were actually ahead of the curve,
Really?
right? In terms of what we regard as best practice. So that was really, really kind of life affirming. And I think we have, I think it's fair to say, I think it was Brian who came up with the motto, we have a motto which is hashtag get shit done. And one of the presentations we saw, I think, was from the CTO of Carling. And she ended her presentation, she said, thank you for, and on the massive screen at the back, she said, this is the most important thing that you'll ever need to know. And it says, hashtag get shit done.
Yeah.
So, to me, that felt like, slightly tongue in cheek, but I think that's a really good vindication that actually the relationship we've built with these guys, the challenge that they have to us to make sure that we are doing things in the way that we should be doing them, that's what's got us to where we've got to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. And can I just ask about communication in terms of what tools and methods of communicating you found?
So I think and I alluded to earlier, I'd say there's 2 main tools for communication there. I think Azure DevOps is the key tool there, and that's really that holds everything to do with the project. So from the Martin's initial vision for the stories, through to fleshing those out fully, then hand it over to the dev team. We put the tasks against that, and that drives and then all the way through to test and deployment. That is really the key platform for communication on it. That's the single source of truth on the project for everybody, for all parties. And then for more informal communication, obviously we're distributed out, so we're not all on one site. Microsoft Teams is where we have various channels on there, for the appropriate audiences, and the informal communication is on there. And then there's always the if something's really important, pick up the phone and have a conversation as well, or go to the pub.
Yeah, we have sold a few quite a few, some of the more technical, challenging problems we've solved over a pint.
Well, it actually comes on to my next question, which is kind of, when you do get challenges, what sort of challenges are you getting and how are you resolving them, apart from in the pub?
I guess we've had a number of challenges there. I guess the main one is getting to the point where we were able to deploy fortnightly due to historic reasons, technical reasons on it. That just wasn't possible at the beginning, and at some points it looked like it may not be possible. It really did challenge all of us. So I'd say that was probably the major challenge that we got through, and how do we do that? That was just with experience of similar, if not quite on that scale, problems before, and bringing the knowledge of various members from the team that had been through various situations of that kind, able to work through that. I guess that was the major one, was it? There's been several, but
I think that was by far the most challenging one because of the degree of technical debt. Which that technical debt sounds like a polite observation. We had a few technical issues, but I would genuinely describe what we had as pretty much a vandalised platform. So trying to recover that. And yeah, I mean, I'd say almost every sprint there are some challenges that we have to overcome one way or another. And that's always, I think that literally comes back down to trust, dialogue, communication. I think if you're always talking, you're always going to be able to solve the problem, or at least have as Byron will know, I always have a plan A, B, C, D, and E. So, even if we can't deliver plan A, we can get to plan C. It might be that we need to do a tactical plan C, because Paul needs something out the door really quickly, and we do accrue some technical debt. But I have an absolute golden rule: do not ever accrue technical debt that you don't have a route out of.
Right.
And I think as long as you adhere to that, when you do have challenges, there's always a way through technically to make something happen. The people side, it's just communication, and I think we've genuinely we've got a good team in the program internally at Redcentric, and an awesome team at TrueNorth. So and we have them all to talk to each other.
Yeah,
and I think tied in with that as well, on the same flavour really. With being a small team and being an open team in a relatively flat organisation and having the continuity, we've got the kind of, and we had a relatively young team, a lot of the crew. But we've got the senior leadership that have been through the battles over the years. Yeah. They're always around, and if they hear that there's a problem, they can get involved straight away. So there's not that detachment between the experienced team and the younger members of the team. That open environment fosters that sharing of knowledge and experience.
Yeah, that sounds great. So just thinking about this type of project, it tends to be ongoing. What work are you doing together at the moment?
Oh, there's lots. This one for you, Martin, to summarise, I guess.
So I guess what we're trying to do strategically is we need to get to a point where we have moved through all of the broken processes. So I guess at a high level, we basically need to fix all the stuff that is broken, but we need to get to the point where we're in a position of continual improvement. Mm-hmm. So, in my view, a digital transformation program is not a task and finish exercise. Yeah. Okay. We are still very much in the phase of getting it to the point where it actually can just enter this continual improvement cycle. I think we're genuinely probably another 12 to 18 months away from being in that position. We are about to, or we are highly likely about to rebuild our D365 F&O install for various reasons. There's a number of technical debt items in there that it's just become too difficult to try and recover. So I think we're likely to do a rebuild on that. That's going to consume an awful lot of our resource, and I'm expecting to consume a lot of Gareth's resource over the next sort of 6, 9 to 12 months to get that done. I think once we've got that out the door, we can then think about moving to this position of continuing improvement. On the CE side, we're basically trying to get to a point where We have an operational single pane of glass for a couple of our teams. So if you look at what Redcentric does at its core, we only really do 4 things. So we sell stuff, we deliver stuff, we support stuff, and we do stuff with money, right? The CE side that Gareth looks after is covered. So CE covers the stuff selling and delivering, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So what we are very much part way through at the moment is looking to build out single panes of glass through integration to a number of our third-party back office applications I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So that, for instance, if you're in our sales team, you can do everything that you need from an initial conversation. This whole concept of prospect to cash. You can come to us as a customer, and every single process that you need to cover to get from that initial dialogue of a lead through the marketing module, through selling the thing, through getting a contract out the door, we can do in one place. And those processes are seamless and they don't fall over and it just works and we can get stuff out the door quickly. Historically, the sales team will say we've always had a challenge getting stuff out the door quickly. And so that's one of the really big drivers we're working on at the moment. Gareth's been Gareth's been massively involved in that. And the other big one is effectively doing exactly the same for the delivery team, because there's a point in time you sold something, it needs to be delivered. And the delivery team, they have similar challenges in the fact that they're trying to deliver a project out of 400 different applications, whereas actually you want a single pane of glass where we're moving to as close as we can to what I've called a one-click model. Whereas if I need to do something in that process as a practitioner, I want it to be as close to just one click to make it happen, not 400 clicks across 800 platforms. So those are the 2 really big pieces that we're currently moving towards at the moment.
When those pieces are out of the way and you're talking more about continuous improvement, how are you going to maintain momentum?
In terms of
just pushing stuff out to TrueNorth to...
So so we already have an established model for doing that, which I have to say, largely Brian set up the mechanics of.
How does that work?
So that's coming back to the model that I described earlier, where anyone in the business can actually identify a business challenge that they have and they can bring it to us.
Yeah.
So you've effectively got 2 threads to the program. You've got the really big kind of strategic stuff, which is kind of largely myself and Paul working out, okay, strategically, where do we need to be in 3, 5, whatever many years? What do we need to achieve that? But the continual improvement stuff, we literally do in every sprint, and we actually have time dedicated to that continual improvement. And every sprint, we dedicate, I can't remember the exact number of story points, but
like a quarter of the points or something like that.
A quarter of every sprint we do, we aspire to do some form of continual improvement. And that, to me, should be driven by the business. Coming back to the observations I made earlier, it should be about someone who sat at their desk going, I have a problem, I think we can solve it through transformation.
Yeah.
Presenting it to us and allowing us to work it through.
Right. So you've got these issues coming in. So how are you kind of sending them over to TrueNorth to implement as they come along?
So we have, it's a pretty mature process. Again, myself and Brian have put together. Bear in mind, all this is from ground zero. None of this existed sort of 4 years ago. So the basic process is anything that goes on within the program, whether it's come from the core program or whether it's a continual improvement item, that basically arrives in the team as effectively a hollow user story, and it might literally just say at the top, "I want to," right? Yeah. And I can't.
Yeah, fair enough.
So it's then down. So that's then down to my immediate team, to myself and Amber and Nick, and we will have a look at that, and we will work out direction of travel, basically. So we will go and do the whole discovery piece. So we'll go and talk to the end users, try and understand what it is they're trying to achieve. I would say 80% of the time, the problem that they perceive they have isn't the actual problem we need to solve, right? So the majority of the time, the first question you're trying to answer is that actually the problem we're trying to solve, or is it something else? But we will then go on and we will then do the full gambit. So we will talk to all key stakeholders. We will, and we look at it end to end. So we try and never look at a chunk of a process in isolation. So where does it fit end to end?
Right.
We will then fill that user story out. We also do, slightly unusual is that we do a lot of the technical design as well internally. So when we pass them across to TrueNorth, It's less of a persona statement, which is kind of a traditional way of doing it. A traditional way of doing it is, I have a problem, I want to achieve this.
Yeah.
And then you may then rely on your solutions provider to work out the answer. But because we're a pretty technical team, we will generally present to True North within a user story a whole technical solution. So it will actually tell you, these are the tables, these are the forms, this is what I want the form to look like, this is the business logic I want on the workflow. And we pass all of that across to True North. Myself and Brian then work on prioritizing sprint by sprint.
Right.
The stuff that we need to deliver based on that we do a degree of sort of 20% of continuing improvement and 8% program. And then myself and it's then Brian's job really working with me to work out the when.
Yeah.
So we can do the kind of like, somewhat will arrive, we'll work out what we need to do the design. And Brian might go, okay, well, for the next 3 sprints, we need to focus on this, which is what we will do.
Yeah.
And then Brian might say, right, I think I'd like to pick this particular item up here, and we will basically drop it into the sprint. And we work in quarters.
Right.
So we tend to plan a quarter ahead, which enables us to bridge one of the really difficult points in terms of corporate governance really is bridging that gap between the agile world of wanting to move quickly and do stuff in 2 weekly cycles and program, because program still to this day is largely entirely waterfall. And quite often you're trying to build programs out from a fiscal perspective that are sort of 1 and 3, 5 year. And we have to bridge that gap. And I think between us, myself and Brian, have actually come up with a pretty mature model for doing that.
Yeah.
So literally a user story that we passed across the Gareth will sit somewhere in that long-term program, and we will know exactly where it sits. And what the users then get out of it is once it's allocated to a sprint, they'll know sort of within 24 hours when it's going to turn up in prod. And that's a pretty mature process. So that's basically how we get it happen.
From a hit and us, we'll story point it, so estimate it in points. And then that will further refine what makes the next sprint, because we're doing a certain number of points per sprint. And we take like that. Just to go back to one thing Martin mentioned there, I think another big advantage of that kind of continuous improvement BAU process is we've got a load of this strategic activity going on, and it can be a little bit frustrating for the business because that can take time to come. But when they see that they've asked for something, it makes sense, it comes through, and a solution for it comes out the other end in a matter of weeks. It keeps that, they see real benefit in a shorter term window as well. So there's that side to it, which is very helpful as well.
I think you're right, because I think it really drives engagement.
Yes,
we've got. I think we're fair to say we've got a growing number of what I sort of call coalition of the willing, which I guess are those key product stakeholders. And we actually have a formal product stakeholder model, so we know who owns which parts of the component and process within the business. But we have a growing number who are really engaged in the program because they have seen the results of Gareth's observations. They've gone, wow, actually, I turned up with some business problems and you solved them quickly. I should engage further.
Yeah, and it's a virtuous circle from that point, isn't it?
Yeah.
Brilliant. I see. Okay, just to wrap up then, what's your top piece of advice for someone who wants to build a good technical partnership? And I'll start with you, Gareth.
I think I keep coming back to it. I think it's communication and transparency. I think that's the thread that runs through all of this. Once you've got that trust and you keep it going with the communication, I think everything flows from that.
Brilliant. And how about you, Martin?
I'm going to return to my observation of earlier. Find a supplier that will do what I said they're going to do when they say they're going to do it. And when you found them, hold on to them.